panel. So we're going to hear from a bunch of brilliant folks. To moderate the panel, we've got a good friend, Stephen Doherty. Stephen is the Group Head, Managing Director of Corporate Relations at Barclays. So please give Stephen a huge round of applause and welcome him on.
Try to get up on a stool with some dignity. Hello, everyone. I'm really, really chuffed to be here, and I'm really delighted and privileged to be asked to moderate this panel on the power of unlikely partnerships. I have to say, when I looked at the pedigree of the two panelists I'm about to talk to, I felt in awe and slightly intimidated. But they're both absolutely lovely people, so I'm sure we'll be fine. Today, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Jennifer Holmgren and Anders Spohr on the stage. Jennifer is the CEO of LanzaTech, and LanzaTech is a revolutionary carbon recycling company which converts carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide into everything from industrial waste gases to municipal solid waste into ethanol, which can then be transformed into fuels and chemicals. Before joining LanzaTech, Jennifer was Vice President and General Manager of the Renewable Energy and Chemicals Business Unit at Honeywell, a leading international supplier and licensor of process technology, catalysts, equipment, and consultant services to the petroleum refining, petrochemical, and gas processing industries. Jennifer is also on the board of Sustainable Bioproducts, a food company seeking to revolutionize the alternative protein market with breakthrough biotechnology. Jennifer and her team at LanzaTech have been awarded the US Environmental Protection Agency Presidential Green Chemistry Award, which sounds very august. She has also been named the most influential leader in the bioeconomy by Biofuels Digest, and last year received a Global Bioenergy Leadership Award. And if that's not enough, Jennifer also holds a PhD and an MBA. You can tell now why I feel slightly intimidated, right? Anders is a partner looking after principal investments of the Danish holding and investment company Novo Holdings. Novo Holdings is wholly owned by Novo Nordisk Foundation. Anders and his team manage and develop a growing portfolio of world-leading life science investments, including LanzaTech, which are focused on creating long-term value, both growing the foundation's assets as well as delivering return that the foundation can distribute for scientific, social, and humanitarian purposes. Before joining Novo Holdings, Anders headed up global product supply at Xelia Pharmaceuticals, which is a specialty pharmaceutical company focused on providing anti-infective treatments against serious and often life-threatening infections. Anders also holds a PhD in biotechnology, an MSc in chemical engineering, as well as a degree in international commerce. Please join me, put your hands together for Jennifer and Anders. So Jennifer told me that I had to buck convention and not let you go first and put Anders on the spot first. So let me ask you an open question. Anders, how did you, with the pedigree I've just described, how did you end up doing what you do today?
Very good question. Actually, sometimes I don't really know myself. No, I think, I mean, my career was starting with research and science, and then I moved into corporate world, and I got a lot of corporate positions. I always dreamt about becoming a kind of a startup, an entrepreneur, very creative. But I mean, as you got sucked up into this whole corporate world, you kind of left that. But actually, getting the opportunity to become an investor, that actually gave the opportunity to come back to that, to come back to the science, come back to actually not running the companies, but supporting CEOs and management teams and actually make their dreams come through and change the world.
You described yourself to me in the room when we were having a cup of tea before as that you're an active investor, and I sort of bridled because I thought you said activist, and we're not great on those at Barclays. Describe for me what an active investor does versus passive.
Active means, I mean, our money are not only green. Okay. We believe that we have a good knowledge around science and support, and we have 100 companies in our portfolio that we want to bring the companies together to support each company to succeed. That's what we mean by active, is we want to leverage everything we can to make the companies that we have in our portfolio a success.
Okay, great. One of which is LanzaTech. So Jennifer, why don't you tell us, I don't want to sound like I'm one of those American shows, Your Journey, but why don't you tell us how you came to be here and running LanzaTech today?
Well, first of all, I am an alumni of the Unreasonable Barclays. So we start with that. So that's how I got here. And for the benefit of my mother, I'll start by telling you I'm Colombian. So it's really important that we get that out of the way too. So actually, I have always tried to do things that change history, actually, believe it or not. And from my days at UOP Honeywell to my work here, I've always tried to create change. And my background in chemistry allows me to do that. These days, I think we've got an emission problem, and that's what drew me to thinking about carbon emissions and what to do about that. But actually, for all of you who plan your careers, I've never planned my career. I kind of stumbled, bumbled to the next job. Whatever I saw was an opportunity to do something new and interesting that could have an impact, and I did that next, and I managed to force my way into doing that next.
Okay, great. This is not a dating show. What first attracted you? What first attracted you to LanzaTech as an investment company?
There you go. Well,
Jennifer.
Be careful, be careful.
Well, it is partly Jennifer, you told me.
It is. I mean, she's a very, very strong CEO. And I mean, we really like the glow and the determination to change things is the most important thing. When we invest, the most important thing is actually management and the CEO. So the starting point is actually looking at, is this a strong team? Is this a strong, chief of the team? And certainly Jennifer is a very strong chief of LanzaTech. Secondly, very much around science. So we've been scanning this space, through a number of companies, and we're using a lot of scientific views on that. The beautiful about LanzaTech is their substrate is not only coming from kind of recycling, but it's a very good biological substrate if you can utilize it to create chemicals. So we saw that very early on. Actually, it's two and a half years ago, we even started looking at LanzaTech. The issue was really around the scaling. So we were waiting to see, will Jennifer succeed? And we actually believe that coming through the first full-scale plant, definitely, it's going to happen.
Okay,
I like investors who invest before we succeed. Just saying. Sorry.
This is an interesting point. So one of the things Anders was saying was that you have an incredibly diverse group of investors and backers and supporters for LanzaTech. And how do you assemble that, and what do you look for in those partnerships apart from the obvious one of some money?
Well, so we have a diverse group of investors for two reasons. One is to get the level of funding that we need to do what we do, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. No, seriously. So you go and talk to a lot of people, and you get used to 100 times getting a no and 1 time getting a yes, right? And if you're canvassing a very small, limited space, you're never going to get a yes, right? And so global partners is important. Otherwise, we would never get to the point we are. And so our investors are global because we've had to go talk to a lot of people around the world. Our technology is also linked to strategic themes that large corporates might be interested in. So what we tend to do is try to find somebody with the shared vision that we have. Partners who want to do something about their emissions and turn that into fuels, early adopters. Again, you got to go all over the world. We have plants in China, India, Japan, and in all those places we have investors. So it really, if you don't look across the world, you won't find the right number of yeses.
You in the sort of facetious opening to this section, you talked about that you prefer investors who get in before you've succeeded, and this is an interesting challenge, isn't it, when you're at that sort of theoretical, not fully proven model stage to try and get people on board. Tell me a little bit about how challenging that is.
It is. So the problem is, I don't know how much you guys know what we do, but we basically build small refineries at industrial plants that recycle carbon emissions and make ethanol. And that means you need the cash to build a plant that's equivalent to building a refining operation. And so if you're going to build a $100 million asset, and you first have to prove it on a pilot scale, $20 million, a demo scale, $40 million, and then commercial scale, there's a lot of risk taken each and every step. And you don't make money until you get to the commercial step. And even then, it's not enough. You have to replicate it. So in the early days, a lot of the funding comes from venture capital, but most funds are 10-year funds. So there's a lot of risk associated with getting a company like ours to scale. And that is actually why our portfolio of investors started out with the venture capitalists and then with the strategic investors who had another stake in our success. But it is super hard. And I think it's really important for all of you out there who are investors to look at all these small companies and realize that many of them are going to have to do the kinds of things we had to do and will require time, patience, and a lot of scaling dollars. You just have to be committed. And I've got a lot of great investors who've been with us from day one.
Fantastic. And I mean, you don't make these investments as sort of acts of corporate altruism, right? You expect a return on these, presumably. How do you think about looking at an opportunity like a LanzaTech or similar? At what stage can you sort of go push the button, we're there?
Good question. No, first of all, we do also take early bets in our group, and we do very much look at the technologies and see if the length or the success is out there somewhere. We take chances, relying on management to succeed. Sorry, what was your question?
No, that's, you're answering my question. My question was how you appraise opportunities like a LanzaTech, and at what stage you would be prepared to sort of get involved in these. Maybe tell us a little bit more about your broader portfolio of investments that would be in the same sphere as LanzaTech.
Yeah, so we're looking at many things like biomaterials. We believe that going away from plastics into something that works. The way we look at it is very much not only looking at the conversion from classical, fossil fuel components, but also the characteristics of those molecules or materials, like density, like weight. So through that, we scan with a technical view of companies that are trying to create new things. We do that in biomaterials. We've done it in agricultural. So we've invested in an insecticide company that is based on proteins and not chemicals. It doesn't kill bees. That are being commercialized as well. We're looking at building materials coming out of different types than Portland cement, for example. So we're doing many views of looking at it in different ways to see if we can find an investment thesis that we can invest into that we can see is becoming a success.
Okay. I'd be remiss if I had both of you on the platform and didn't talk a little bit about climate change. So many environmentalists are now positing that widespread adoption of carbon capture and utilization projects is going to be key for us to limit global warming and achieve a 1.5 or a 2 degree scenario. Have all investors kind of reached the same conclusion, and how has that realization benefited LanzaTech? Let me take that in two parts.
All investors have not reached that conclusion.
Good.
Very few, in fact, have reached that conclusion. I find that even the ones that say they have a social responsibility or environmental responsibility fund are still measuring the projects with the same metrics as every other fund. They still don't want to invest in the first project, they want to invest in the second one. Everybody always wants to invest in the second one. We need capital to invest in the first one. And that means both equity and debt. Debt for a company like us is very, very hard to get. It's really expensive. It really blows up a project, right? When you're paying 10%, yeah, wow, you're a banker. So I really think, yeah. No, but...
I'm a gentleman that happens to work for a bank.
You didn't say you were a gentleman, a scholar. I bet you he'd say that.
Okay.
You know what? I think it's extremely important that we learn to adjust investments, not by the risk only of the investments. We need to have a portfolio of projects where that same risk adjustment lens is not played out. Because if we don't, it's taken our company 15 years to get to scale. you cringe at that. But let me tell you, we've done it twice as fast as anybody else to do something of this scale. And we need other companies that follow us to do it twice as fast. And so that means the people that are lending money, the people that are investing, are going to have to say, I have a 20-year fund, not a 10-year fund. I am going to find a different way to risk adjust these investments, and I'm going to help these companies at every stage of scale. We've raised $350 million, and we're not done. Okay?
So, Anders, that sounds like a challenge for you and for guys in your industry to think more long term and to maybe be a bit more courageous on these things.
Yeah, I mean, fully agree. I think that I mean, if we talk a little bit about the Novo way of doing things, we do startups. We do seeds to make sure we do venture capitals. The issue is really coming down to the fact that when you come out of the venture cycle of inventing your technology and you potentially even have your first commercial sale, scaling that's where the risk component comes in. There are plenty of capital, and we're also looking at it early. That scaling piece, that's where somebody comes and asks you, can I borrow $100 million to build a fermentation plant or a factory? But I don't have any customers yet. I have a few, and then they will come. And that's really and I think the challenge for us as investors and also the companies is to create a way of looking where potentially you can de-risk it by pooling multiple companies through those scaling units. Because that's essentially, we see at least, as one of the key challenges for this, I mean, all the innovators and the new technology that are emerging.
Does it require a mindset shift, though? Does it require companies like yours to think differently about these things?
Yeah,
you talk about the de-risking, the pooling the risk, but do you just need to be more open-minded to these things, or?
Good question. I think, I mean, we don't have an exit horizon on our investments. I mean, we can invest forever if we want to. We can also sell if we want to. But I think it comes from the mindset of focusing on a return, and a return that if you're in the investment world is monitored around, I mean, IRRs or net present values, which is important to make sure that this is how you run it. But I think we need to look with longer glasses, longer way of thinking to make sure that we actually fund it all the way through. But it's still a lot of money. It is easy when you put 10 million in and you lose them. When you put 100 million in and you do 10 of 100 million, you have $1 billion at stake potentially. That suddenly you don't really know if, I mean, 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 5 might make it. And that's where it gets difficult to get through, I mean, our decision bodies.
For you to get to 350 million of funding, how did you convince these people to get on board? Force of personality?
No,
charm?
no. Charm, I have none.
That's not true.
Well, actually, I made the joke about kissing a lot of frogs. What I have found is that people who already believe in a mission or an idea, those are the only ones you ever convince. You're never going to convince at an early stage people that haven't bought in. And so I would say that's actually one of the things you really do is you look for the people that get it the minute you walk in the room. And then you work with them to really convince them that, okay, they got it. This is why it has to be your company. They have to help. And we're very fortunate. We got a lot of people that have resonated with our story who really are committed to doing something. Oil companies, chemical companies, steel companies, and people such as Barclays. I mean, the investment that you make in the Unreasonable team helps get our message out, which invites other people to the table, whether it's to help us or to benefit everybody else.
We get enormous value from that relationship too, I'm sure. One last question. What next for LanzaTech? What does the future hold?
Future holds? Well, we're taking ethanol to jet fuel, so the future holds that you're all going to someday fly on planes powered by recycled carbon emissions. And the other thing I want, actually, I want you to also be able to buy things in the store that have recycled carbon. So we're putting ethanol into fuels in cars, but we're also starting to put ethanol to make it into fibers. So hopefully next year you walk into a store and buy a piece of clothing or a piece of an article that came from recycled carbon emissions. And that's what's next, and I'm super excited about that.
Anders, when we were talking just before you came on here, you talked about how much you love working with us, with Jennifer. So tell me about the future for this unlikely partnership.
I mean, Jennifer is a tough cookie. I think it's going to be very great. I mean, I think that the way we look at it is that in 10 years' time, we have a new fermentation platform that you cannot only do ethanol on, you can also do other chemicals. And I think that's how we see the future. And then on top of that, we have the fuel and the materials coming. But establishing that new platform that is not sugar-based and, I mean, food-based, that's really what we see as a bright, bright future for LanzaTech.
Marvelous. Well, thank you to you both for being with us here today and sharing your thoughts on the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Jennifer and Anders.